Captain Lee Daeho stood on the bridge of the Indomitable Spirit, watching stars that no human had ever seen before. The quantum drive hummed quietly beneath his feet. After 3 months of travel, they had finally crossed into unknown space. Earth was now so far behind them that radio signals would take decades to reach home. "Sir, we're picking up something strange," said Lieutenant Park So-young from her science station. Her fingers moved quickly across the control panel. "There, our energy readings coming from the third planet in this system. They don't match anything in our databases." Lee walked over to look at her screen. The readings showed patterns that looked almost like city lights, but spread across an entire continent. "How sure are you that it's artificial?" "Very sure, Captain. The patterns are too organized to be natural. Someone built whatever is down there." Park's voice carried excitement and fear in equal measure. "Sir, I think we found aliens." Engineer Kim Tae-min looked up from his station. "The quantum drive is working perfectly, Captain. No signs that anyone has detected us. Whatever scanning technology they use, it can't see our ships." Admiral Jang Hye-jin's voice crackled over the communication system from the fleet command ship. "All vessels maintain radio silence. We're going to take a closer look." The human fleet consisted of 5 ships, each carrying about 200 people. They had left Earth with great hopes but also great fears. Humanity had finally developed faster than light travel, but they had no idea what they would find among the stars. Now they had their answer. "Captain, I'm reading multiple ships in orbit around the planet," reported Commander Cho Sung-woo from the tactical station. "They're big, much bigger than ours, but their design is completely different from anything we've ever imagined." Lee studied the alien ships on the main screen. They looked like giant crystals that had been carved into smooth, flowing shapes. Beautiful, but also intimidating. "How many ships?" 12 in orbit. "But Captain, there are more coming from deeper in the system. I count at least 30 ships total, and they're all heading toward the planet." Dr. Yoon Min-soo, the fleet's anthropologist, had been quiet until now. "Captain, we need to be very careful here. We're seeing evidence of a spacefaring civilization that's much more advanced than us. Those ships could probably destroy our entire fleet without much effort. But they haven't seen us yet," Kim Tae-min added. "Our quantum signature is completely different from whatever technology they use. To them, we're invisible." The bridge fell silent as everyone considered their options. They had traveled so far from home to find this moment, but now that it was here, none of them felt ready for it. "Sir, I'm picking up communications between the alien ships," Park So-young announced. "It's not like our radio. The signals are somehow connected to the quantum field itself. I can't understand the language, but the patterns suggest they're very organized, military organized." Lee made his decision. "Take us closer to the planet, but keep us hidden. I want to see what we're dealing with before we make any moves." As the Indomitable Spirit moved into the inner system, the alien world grew larger on their screens. It was beautiful, with blue oceans and green continents, but the cities were unlike anything from Earth. Massive spires reached up from the surface, connected by bridges that seemed to float in midair. "Captain," Cho Sung-woo said suddenly, "there's another ship type in the system, much smaller than the others. It's not moving like a military vessel." On the screen, a new ship appeared. This one was different from the crystal-like military vessels. It looked more practical, with cargo pods attached to its hull. "A trading ship?" Lee wondered aloud. "It's heading for one of the outer planets," Park reported. "Should we follow it?" Admiral Jang's voice came over the comm again. "Lee, take your ship and investigate that trader, but be ready to run if things go wrong." The Indomitable Spirit followed the alien trader to a small planet on the edge of the system. This world had a thin atmosphere and several mining installations on its surface. The trader ship landed near one of the installations. "I'm reading life signs," Park announced. "The beings down there are different from the ones on the main planet. Smaller, with different biological patterns." Through their sensors, they watched as the alien traders met with the miners. The traders were tall and thin, with forearms and skin that seemed to change color. The miners were shorter and stockier, with thick gray skin. "They're trading," Yoon Min-soo observed. "Raw materials from the mines for manufactured goods from the traders. This looks like a peaceful exchange. That's when everything changed. New ships appeared at the edge of the system. These were massive, much larger than anything they had seen before. They moved with purpose toward the mining planet. Military ships, Cho Sung-woo identified. And they're coming fast. The trading ship and the miners seemed to panic. The traders rushed to load their ship while the miners scattered toward underground shelters. Why are they afraid? Lee wondered aloud. They got their answer when the military ships reached the planet. Instead of landing, they simply hovered over the mining installations. A voice boomed across all frequencies, speaking in a language none of the humans understood. But the tone was clear. This was a command, not a request. The traders and miners stopped what they were doing and stood perfectly still. Then slowly, they began to organize themselves into neat lines. It's like they're being inspected, Park observed, or processed. One of the military ships landed, and tall figures in flowing robes emerged. They moved among the traders and miners, examining them, making notes on devices that glowed with internal light. This isn't trade, Yoon realized. This is control. Those military ships aren't protecting anyone. They're enforcing something. Lee felt a chill run down his spine. They had found aliens, but they had also found something that looked very much like an empire. And if there was an empire out here, humanity had just entered its territory without permission. Captain, Kim called from his station. I'm detecting energy buildups in some of those military ships. If they're weapons, they're more powerful than anything we have. The situation on the planet below was getting worse. The robed figures were separating the miners from the traders, forcing them into different groups. Some of the miners were being loaded onto the military ships. They're taking prisoners, Cho said quietly. Lee had seen enough. We need to warn the fleet, he decided. This isn't just first contact anymore. We've stumbled into something much bigger and much more dangerous. But as he turned to give orders to retreat, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. Captain, Park shouted. One of those military ships is turning toward us. On the screen, one of the massive alien vessels was rotating to face their position. Lights were beginning to glow along its hull. Impossible, Kim breathed. They can't see us. But they could. And now humanity's first contact with aliens was about to become something none of them had planned for. Lee gripped his command chair as the alien ship began to move toward them. All hands prepare for contact, he announced to his crew. And pray that we're ready for whatever comes next. The massive alien ship stopped just a few kilometers away from the indomitable Spirit. Captain Lee Dae-ho waited, his heart pounding as both ships hung motionless in space. Then, without warning, his communications panel lit up with an incoming signal. Captain, Dr. Park So-young said in amazement, they're speaking to us in perfect English. A voice filled the bridge, deep and strangely musical. Unknown vessel, you will identify yourself immediately. Your presence in Imperial space without proper authorization is a violation of the Galactic Code. Lee took a deep breath. This was the moment that would change everything for humanity. This is Captain Lee Dae-ho of the Earth vessel Indomitable Spirit. We come in peace and seek communication with your people. There was a long pause. When the voice returned, it sounded confused. Earth? There is no registered world called Earth in Imperial records. State your species classification and Imperial registration number. We don't have an Imperial registration number, Lee replied. We've never had contact with your empire before. We're from a world outside your territory. Another pause, this one even longer. Impossible. There are no unregistered species in this sector. All worlds have been cataloged and classified for over 3,000 years. Dr. Yoon Min-soo stepped forward. Captain, may I speak to them? Lee nodded. This is Dr. Yoon Min-soo of the human species. We understand this may be surprising, but we are new to space travel. We've only recently developed the technology to travel between stars. Impossible, the alien voice repeated. No new species has achieved faster than light capability in the past 5,000 years. All such development is monitored and controlled by the Imperial Academy. Engineer Kim Tae-min couldn't help himself. We developed our quantum drive technology independently. We had no idea there was an empire out here. The silence that followed was so long that Lee began to wonder if the alien ship had left. Finally, the voice returned. but now it sounded different, more uncertain. You will prepare to be boarded for proper evaluation and classification. Do not resist or you will be destroyed. Understood, Lee replied. We will cooperate fully. Within an hour, a smaller vessel had docked with the indomitable spirit. The airlock cycled, and humanity met its first aliens face to face. The boarding party consisted of 3 beings that were clearly in charge, and several others that seemed to be assistants. The leaders were tall and graceful with pale blue skin and large dark eyes. They wore flowing robes covered in symbols that seemed to shift and change as Lee watched them. The lead alien stepped forward and spoke, though its mouth didn't move in quite the right way for the words they were hearing. I am Overseer Kythera of the Imperial Classification Bureau. You will present your species for proper evaluation. Dr. Park had been studying the aliens since they came aboard. She whispered to Lee, Captain, I think they're using some kind of mental communication to translate their language, but I can't sense any psychic activity from them directed at us. Overseer Kythera heard her somehow. You cannot sense our mental communications? How is this possible? All intelligent species possess at least basic psychic abilities. We don't have any psychic abilities, Dr. Yoon explained. Humans communicate through spoken language, written symbols, and physical gestures. The aliens looked at each other in what seemed like alarm. One of them pulled out a device that began making soft beeping sounds as it scanned the humans. This is unusual, Kythera said slowly. The scanner indicates that your species lacks the neural structures necessary for psychic communication. Yet you have clearly achieved technological advancement. How did you develop faster-than-light travel without psychic enhancement? Kim Taemin stepped forward eagerly. We used quantum field manipulation. By creating a bubble of altered space-time around our ships, we can effectively move faster than light, without actually exceeding the speed of light itself. The alien stared at him. Quantum field manipulation without psychic interface? Show us your technology. Kim led them to the engine room where the quantum drive hummed quietly. The alien studied it with increasing amazement. This technology is completely unknown to us, Kythera admitted. It operates on principles that the Imperial Academy declared impossible centuries ago. Impossible how? Kim asked. The mathematics required for this type of field manipulation can only be processed by a psychically enhanced mind. No purely biological brain should be capable of the calculations necessary to build such a device. Kim grinned. We used computers, artificial thinking machines that can perform millions of calculations per second. The aliens exchanged looks again. Your species builds thinking machines. Without psychic oversight? Of course, Dr. Park said. How else would we build them? All artificial intelligence in the Empire requires psychic control, Kythera explained. Uncontrolled thinking machines are forbidden by Imperial law. They are considered too dangerous. Dangerous how? Dr. Yoon asked. They think in ways that biological minds cannot predict or control. They can develop ideas that contradict established knowledge. The humans looked at each other. But that's exactly why they're useful, Kim said. They can solve problems that we can't solve on our own. Over the next several hours, the aliens conducted what they called a classification evaluation. They tested human physical capabilities, intellectual abilities, and technological knowledge. With each test, they seemed to grow more confused and concerned. This is unprecedented, Kythera finally announced. Your species does not fit into any of the established classifications. You lack psychic abilities, which should make you a Class 7 primitive species. But your technology is more advanced in some ways than Class 2 civilizations. You have no formal hierarchy, which suggests Class 6 chaos culture, but you demonstrate advanced cooperation and organization. What does that mean for us? Lee asked. I don't know, Kythera admitted. In 10,000 years of Imperial history, no species has ever defied classification like this. I must report to my superiors for guidance. While they waited, Dr. Park had been studying the aliens' equipment. Overseer Kythera, may I ask about your technology? This scanner you've been using is fascinating. Kythera seemed pleased by the question. It operates by interfacing directly with the quantum field through psychic enhancement. The user's mind guides the device's scanning patterns. May I try it? Park asked. You cannot. You lack the necessary psychic abilities. But what if I just use the physical controls? There are no physical controls. All Imperial technology requires psychic interface. Park picked up the scanner anyway and began examining it. To everyone's surprise, including her own, the device activated and began functioning normally. Impossible. Kithara breathed. The device should not respond to non-psychic operation. Park studied the readouts. It's actually quite simple once you understand the interface pattern. The quantum field responds to mental intention, but it doesn't require psychic ability. It just requires focused thought and clear intent. She made a small adjustment to the device, and suddenly it began working twice as efficiently as before. The aliens stared in shocked silence. Finally, Kithara spoke. You have just improved Imperial technology using methods that our greatest scientists declared impossible. How? I'm not sure, Park admitted. I just thought about what the device was trying to do and imagined a better way to do it. Imagined, Kithara repeated slowly. You used imagination to improve our technology. Of course. How else would you improve anything? Kithara looked at the other aliens, then back at Park. In the Empire, technology improvement is handled by the Academy, according to established procedures. Imagination is discouraged. It leads to unpredictable results. But unpredictable results are how you discover new things, Kim said. New things are not desired, Kithara replied. The Empire has achieved perfection through order and predictability. New things disrupt order. Dr. Yoon stepped forward. But if you never try new things, how do you solve new problems? There are no new problems, Kithara said. All problems have been solved. All knowledge has been catalogued. The Empire has reached the final state of civilization. The humans exchanged glances. They were beginning to understand that they had encountered something far stranger than just an alien empire. They had found a civilization that had deliberately stopped growing, stopped learning, stopped changing, and their very existence was proof that such a thing was impossible. Overseer, Lee said carefully. What happens now? Kithara looked uncertain for the first time since boarding their ship. I honestly don't know, Captain Lee. Your species represents something that should not exist according to everything the Empire believes about the universe. I must seek guidance from the high evaluators, and if they can't classify us, then the Empire will have to decide whether to change its understanding of the universe. Kithara paused. Or eliminate the evidence that contradicts it. The silence that followed was broken only by the humming of the quantum drive, a sound that represented everything the Empire considered impossible, but which existed nonetheless. 3 weeks had passed since the human fleet arrived at the massive Imperial station called Hierarchical Glory. The station was bigger than most cities on Earth, a spinning wheel of metal and crystal that housed over 1 million beings. Captain Lee Dae-ho stood in what the Empire called an evaluation chamber, waiting to meet someone called a high evaluator. The door opened with a sound like singing crystal, and a figure entered that made Lee take a step backward. The high evaluator was tall, nearly 3 meters, with skin that seemed to be made of living silver. Its eyes were pure white, without any visible pupils, and it moved with a grace that seemed to defy gravity. I am High Evaluator Thessian, the being said, its voice echoing strangely in the chamber. I have studied the reports about your species for many cycles, and I find them disturbing. Disturbing how? Lee asked. Your existence challenges fundamental principles that have guided the Empire for 10,000 years. According to our science, a species like yours cannot exist. Yet here you are. Over the past weeks, humans had been tested, studied, and evaluated by dozens of Imperial scientists. Each test had only made the problem worse. Humans consistently did things that Imperial science said were impossible. Dr. Park So-young had improved 17 different pieces of Imperial technology using what she called common sense modifications. Engineer Kim Tae-min had solved mathematical problems that Imperial computers couldn't handle by using what he called creative thinking. Dr. Yoon Min-soo had predicted social behaviors in Imperial populations that psychic specialists had missed completely. The problem, Thessian continued, is not just that you can do these things. The problem is that your methods are spreading to other species. What do you mean? Lee asked. Show him, Thessian commanded. A wall screen activated, showing a scene from somewhere else in the station. Lee watched as a group of aliens that looked like the Volanti traders they had first encountered were working together on some kind of mechanical device. But instead of using the smooth, coordinated movements he had seen from Imperial citizens, they were arguing, pointing at different parts of the device, trying different approaches. The Volanti have been exposed to your people's ideas, Thessian explained. Now they are questioning established procedures, they are experimenting, they are improvising. Lee couldn't see the problem. That sounds like normal problem-solving to me. It is chaos, Thessian said firmly. For 3,000 years, the Volanti have followed proper imperial procedures for all technical work. Now they waste time on unnecessary experimentation. Another screen showed a different scene. This time it was the gray-skinned miners they had seen on the first planet. They were in what looked like a classroom, but instead of sitting quietly while an instructor spoke, they were asking questions. Lots of questions. The Kelthani miners have become curious. Thessian said the word like it tasted bad. They want to know why they do their work certain ways. They ask about alternatives. Yesterday, 3 of them submitted requests to study engineering instead of mining. That's wonderful, Lee said. Learning new skills, advancing themselves. It is disorder, Thessian corrected. The Kelthani are miners. They have always been miners. The Empire assigned them this role based on their biological and psychological profiles. When beings abandon their assigned roles, society breaks down. A third screen showed something that made Lee's heart race. It was Lieutenant Kang Ji-woo, one of the human officers, speaking to a mixed group of aliens. She was teaching them about human democracy, explaining how humans made decisions through discussion and voting instead of simply following orders from above. This is perhaps the most dangerous idea your species has brought, Thessian said. The concept that all beings should have a voice in decisions that affect them. It contradicts the fundamental structure of imperial society. How so? Lee asked, though he was beginning to understand. The Empire maintains order through hierarchy. Each species, each individual has their place. Decisions are made by those qualified to make them, based on their classification level. When lower classification beings believe they should participate in decision-making, chaos results. Lee watched the screen as Kang explained how humans had solved problems through cooperation between people with different skills and perspectives. The aliens listening to her were clearly fascinated, asking questions about how such a system could work. She's not trying to cause problems, Lee said. She's just sharing how we do things. Which is exactly the problem, a new voice said from behind them. Lee turned to see another Imperial official entering the chamber. This one was different from any alien he had met before. Where other Imperial citizens moved with calm, measured steps, this one strode into the room with obvious anger. Its skin was deep red, and its 4 arms gestured dramatically as it spoke. I am Grand Admiral Vextar, the being announced, and I've come to discuss the threat your species represents to Imperial security. We're not a threat, Lee protested. We came here peacefully. Your presence is a threat to everything the Empire represents, Vextar declared. In the 3 weeks since your arrival, we have recorded 47 incidents of Imperial citizens questioning established procedures. 17 requests for role reassignment from beings who have been perfectly content in their positions for decades. 6 minor rebellions on frontier worlds where local populations demand access to human-style technology. Thessian looked troubled. I had not heard about the rebellions. Because you spend your time in laboratories studying impossibilities, Vexatar said dismissively. I deal with the real consequences. Imperial patrol ships have been attacked by beings who claim they should have the right to think for themselves like humans do. Lee felt a chill of fear, but also something else. Pride, maybe. They're just asking for the same freedoms we take for granted. Freedom is chaos, Vextar stated. The Empire has brought order to the galaxy for 10,000 years. Every being has their place, their role, their purpose. When beings start believing they can choose their own purpose, society collapses. But what if their assigned purpose isn't what they're best at? Lee asked. What if they could contribute more in a different role? Both aliens stared at him. Impossible, Thessian said. Imperial classification is based on 10,000 years of scientific analysis. Beings are assigned to roles that match their optimal capabilities. But people change, Lee argued. They learn, they grow, they develop new interests and abilities. The Empire does not change. Vextar said firmly. Change brings instability. Instability brings conflict. Conflict brings suffering. And yet, Thessian said slowly, the humans have changed Imperial technology in ways that improve efficiency by factors we had not thought possible. Vextar's red skin darkened further. Which proves they are dangerous. If they can change our technology so easily, what else might they change? The question hung in the air like a threat. Lee realized he was seeing something historic. The first cracks in a civilization that had remained unchanged for millennia. There is another problem, Thessian continued reluctantly. The humans work together in ways that our social scientists cannot explain. They have no clear hierarchy, no defined roles, yet they accomplish complex tasks through what they call teamwork. How is that possible? Vextar demanded. We trust each other, Lee said simply. We listen to each other's ideas, even if they come from someone with less experience or different training. Sometimes the best solution comes from an unexpected source. Trust. Vextar repeated the word like it was foreign. You allow unqualified beings to make important decisions. We allow everyone to contribute their perspective. Then we decide together what to do. Madness, Vextar declared. Such a system would collapse within days. We've been using it for thousands of years, Lee pointed out. It's how we built our civilization, developed our technology, even how we got here. Thessian was quiet for a long moment. Finally, it spoke. I have been studying Imperial records. For the past 2,000 years, our technological advancement has been minimal. We have perfected existing systems but developed nothing truly new. Because we achieved perfection, Vextar said automatically. Or because we stopped trying new approaches, Thessian countered. When was the last time anyone in the Empire suggested a completely new solution to an old problem? Such suggestions are not encouraged, Vextar admitted. They disrupt established order. But what if some of those disruptions led to better solutions? Lee asked. What if change isn't always chaos? What if it's growth? The room fell silent except for the humming of the station's systems. Lee could see both aliens struggling with ideas that challenged everything they had been taught about how civilization should work. This conversation is over, Vextar announced suddenly. I came here to inform you that the Imperial High Command has made a decision about the human problem. Lee's heart sank. What decision? Your species will be given one opportunity to submit to proper Imperial classification and control. You will cease all contact with other Imperial citizens. You will end your experiments. With Imperial technology, you will accept assigned roles within the Imperial hierarchy. And if we refuse? Lee asked, though he already knew the answer. Then you will be removed as a threat to Imperial stability, Vextar. The ceremony hall aboard Hierarchical Glory was vast enough to hold 1,000 beings. Captain Lee Daeho had never seen anything like it. Massive pillars stretched up into darkness, covered in symbols that seemed to move and shift in the dim light. At the center of the hall sat something that made his blood run cold. Emperor Zalthurian the Eternal had awakened from his 5,000-year sleep to deal with what Imperial records now called the human crisis. Emperor was enormous, easily 4 meters tall, with skin that looked like polished black stone. His eyes glowed with an inner light that hurt to look at directly. When he spoke, his voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. So these are the Chaos Bringers, the Emperor said, his gaze sweeping over the assembled humans. Smaller than I expected. Admiral Zhang Hejin stood beside Lee, representing Earth's government. She had arrived just days before with reinforcements, 20 more ships carrying the best of humanity's military and diplomatic personnel. But looking at the Emperor, Lee wondered if they had brought enough. Your Imperial Magnificence, Admiral Zhang began, using the formal address they had been taught. We come seeking peaceful coexistence between our peoples. The Emperor's laugh was like grinding stone. Peaceful coexistence? Your very existence is an act of war against everything the Empire represents. On either side of the Emperor stood the Imperial High Command. Grand Admiral Vextar was there, along with dozens of other high-ranking officials. But Lee noticed something interesting. Many of them looked uncertain, even troubled. The human crisis had clearly divided the Imperial leadership. In 5,000 years of rule, the Emperor continued, I have never faced a challenge like this. Other species that refused imperial authority were simply destroyed. But you... He paused, studying the humans with those terrible glowing eyes. You cannot be simply destroyed, can you? Because the ideas you carry have already spread, it was true. In the months since first contact, human concepts had spread throughout the Empire like wildfire. The idea that beings could choose their own paths, that technology could be improved through experimentation, that cooperation was better than rigid hierarchy, these thoughts had taken root in minds across 1,000 worlds. 47 worlds have declared independence from imperial rule, Vextar reported grimly. The rebellion grows daily. They call themselves the Coalition of Free Worlds and claim to follow human principles of self-determination. And what is the Empire's response? The Emperor asked. We have dispatched the Third Fleet to restore order, Vextar replied. But the rebels fight using unusual tactics. They do not follow proper military doctrine. Li felt a surge of both pride and fear. Captain Bei Sung-ho, one of humanity's best tactical minds, had been secretly teaching military strategy to rebel groups. Human concepts of guerrilla warfare, rapid strike tactics, and asymmetric conflict were completely unknown to imperial forces trained for formal, hierarchical battle. Show me, the Emperor commanded. The air above the ceremony hall filled with a three-dimensional display showing a star system Li didn't recognize. Imperial ships, massive and imposing, hung in space around a planet. As they watched, smaller ships emerged from asteroid fields, attacked the Imperial vessels with hit-and-run tactics, then vanished before the Imperial ships could respond effectively. Impossible, several Imperial officials muttered. Ships cannot hide in asteroid fields. Sensors would detect them immediately. But the rebel ships were using technology taught to them by humans, simple electromagnetic shielding that confused Imperial psychic sensors. To the Empire's advanced detection systems, the rebel ships simply vanished. They fight like animals, Vextar said with disgust. No honor, no proper formation, no respect for military tradition. They fight to win, Admiral Zhang corrected quietly. That's what war is about. War is about order, the Emperor declared. About demonstrating the superiority of civilization over chaos. These rebels make war into effectiveness over ceremony, Li suggested, the Emperor's glowing eyes fixed on him. You dare mock imperial military tradition? I'm not mocking anything, Li replied, trying to keep his voice steady. I'm just pointing out that there are different ways to approach conflict. Maybe effectiveness should matter more than tradition. Effectiveness without order is meaningless, the Emperor stated. Watch, the display changed to show another star system. This time the Imperial response was different. Instead of sending conventional fleets, the Empire had deployed something Li had never seen before. Ships that seemed to be made of pure energy, crackling with power that made space itself bend around them. These are the eternal weapons, the Emperor explained. Created at the dawn of the Empire when we first brought order to the galaxy, they have not been used for 3,000 years because no one has been foolish enough to challenge Imperial authority since then. The energy ships moved toward a rebel-held planet. When they reached it, they simply erased it. The planet didn't explode or burn. It just stopped existing, leaving empty space where a world had been. The ceremony hall fell silent. Even the Imperial officials looked shaken by what they had witnessed. 50 million beings lived on that world, High Evaluator Thessian said quietly. 50 million beings who simply wanted the right to govern themselves. 50 million beings who chose chaos over order, the Emperor corrected. Their deaths will serve as a lesson to others who might consider rebellion. Li felt sick but also angry. You just committed genocide because people wanted freedom. I maintained order, the Emperor replied. For 10,000 years, the Empire has brought peace to the galaxy through strength. When beings accept their place in the imperial hierarchy, they prosper. When they reject it, they face the consequences. But what if the hierarchy is wrong? Dr. Park So-young spoke up from behind Li. What if beings could be happier and more productive if they were allowed to choose their own roles? The Emperor stared at her. The hierarchy is not wrong. It is based on 10,000 years of scientific analysis and practical experience. Every being has their optimal place in imperial society. But you've never allowed anyone to try alternatives, Park pointed out. How can you know your way is best if you've never tested other approaches? Because we achieved perfection, the Emperor said. But for the first time there was uncertainty in his voice. The Empire represents the final form of civilization. We solved all the problems of governance, technology, and social organization millennia ago. Then why haven't you advanced? Engineer Kim Tae-min asked. Your technology is impressive, but it's been the same for thousands of years. You've stopped growing, stopped learning, stopped discovering new things. We have no need for new things, Vextar interjected. We have everything necessary for a perfect society. But what about joy? Dr. Yoon Min-soo stepped forward. What about wonder? Discovery? The excitement of learning something new? Creating something that's never existed before? Such emotions are irrelevant, the Emperor said, but his voice sounded less certain. Order brings contentment. Contentment is sufficient, is it though? Lee asked. Look at what's happening across your empire. Beings are risking their lives for the chance to experience something more than contentment. They want purpose, challenge, growth. They want chaos, the Emperor declared, but Lee could see doubt creeping into those glowing eyes. Admiral Zhang stepped forward. Your Imperial Magnificence, we propose a compromise. Allow us to establish a small territory where beings can choose to live according to human principles. If our way leads to chaos and destruction, it will serve as proof that the Imperial system is superior. If it leads to prosperity and growth, perhaps both our peoples can learn from the experiment. The ceremony hall erupted in arguments as Imperial officials debated the proposal. Some supported it, curious to see what would happen. Others opposed it violently, claiming that any deviation from Imperial order would lead to galactic catastrophe. The Emperor raised his hand, and silence fell immediately. Impossible. The Empire cannot allow competing systems of governance. There can be only one way, or there is chaos. Then you're afraid, Lee said quietly. The words hit the vast hall like a thunderclap. No one had ever accused the Emperor of fear before. What did you say? The Emperor asked, his voice dangerous. You're afraid, Lee repeated louder this time. You're afraid that if people have a choice, they won't choose your system. You're afraid that beings might be happier and more productive under different rules. You're so afraid of being proven wrong that you'd rather commit genocide than allow alternatives to exist. The Emperor rose from his throne, towering over the assembled beings. Power crackled around him like lightning. I am not afraid of anything, least of all chaos-bringing primitives. Then prove it, Admiral Zhang challenged. Allow the experiment. Let beings choose between Imperial order and human freedom. If your way is truly superior, they'll choose it willingly. For a long moment, the Emperor stood silent, power radiating from his massive form. Finally, he spoke. Very well. You will have your experiment, but not as a compromise. His voice grew cold and terrible. You will have it as a war. Every being in the galaxy will choose. Imperial order or human chaos. Those who choose chaos will be destroyed, along with their teachers. And when the galaxy... Captain Oh Hyunwoo gripped the controls of the unbreakable will as his ship dove toward the center of the galaxy. Behind him, the final battle for the Empire's heart raged across 1,000 star systems. It had been 11 months since Emperor Zalthurian declared war on humanity and the coalition of free worlds. Now, as the Emperor's deadline approached, everything came down to this desperate mission. Captain, his science officer reported, we're detecting massive energy buildups from the Imperial core. Whatever they're planning, it's going to happen soon. Oh looked at the tactical display showing the war's progress. The news was mixed. Human tactics had proven devastatingly effective against Imperial forces trained for formal warfare. Captain Bae Sung-ho's guerrilla campaigns had liberated dozens of worlds, but the Empire's eternal weapons had destroyed just as many, turning entire planets into empty space when their populations chose freedom over Imperial order. Any word from Earth? Oh asked. President Lee Myung-suk's latest message arrived an hour ago. The communications officer replied. Earth's population voted unanimously to continue the fight even if it means extinction. Her exact words were, better to die free than live as slaves. Oh nodded grimly. It was a very human response to an impossible situation. When faced with overwhelming odds, humans had a tendency to become more stubborn, not less. The bridge door opened and Dr. Park So-young entered, looking exhausted but excited. She had spent months studying captured Imperial technology, trying to understand how the Empire's most advanced systems actually worked. "Captain, I think I've figured something out," she announced. "The Empire's power source isn't what we thought it was." "What do you mean?" Park activated a holographic display showing the structure of Imperial technology. "We assumed their incredible energy output came from some kind of advanced physics we didn't understand. But I was wrong. It comes from slavery." "Slavery?" "Psychic slavery," Park explained. "Every piece of Imperial technology is powered by enslaved consciousness. When the Empire conquered species with psychic abilities, they didn't just rule them. They trapped their minds inside machines to power Imperial civilization." O stared at the display in horror. "You're saying their entire technology base is built on torturing sentient beings?" "Worse than that. The beings trapped in their machines aren't dead. They're fully conscious, experiencing thousands of years of torment while being forced to power the very system that enslaved them. That's why Imperial technology never advances. The enslaved minds are too traumatized to create anything new. They can only maintain what already exists." "How many beings are we talking about?" "Billions," Park said quietly. "Maybe trillions. Every ship, every station, every city in the Empire is powered by enslaved consciousness. The Emperor himself draws his power from the largest concentration of enslaved minds in the galaxy. The implications hit O like a physical blow. If we could free them, the Empire would collapse overnight," Park confirmed. "But Captain, there's more. I think I know why humans are immune to Imperial psychic control. It's not because we lack psychic abilities. It's because we think differently." "How so?" "Imperial psychic technology works by imposing rigid thought patterns on minds. It forces beings to think in predetermined ways. But human consciousness is chaotic. We think in patterns that the Imperial systems can't predict or control. When we touch their technology, we disrupt the psychic commands that keep the enslaved minds trapped." O remembered all the times humans had improved Imperial devices simply by thinking about them differently. "So every time we've modified their technology, we've been partially freeing the enslaved minds inside," Park confirmed. "That's why Imperial officials were so disturbed by our improvements. We weren't just changing their technology, we were damaging their control systems." An alarm sounded throughout the ship. They had reached the Galactic core, where the Emperor's palace station orbited the massive black hole at the galaxy's center. The station was enormous, larger than most solar systems, and it pulsed with energy that made space itself ripple. "Captain," the tactical officer reported, "we're being scanned by something more powerful than anything we've encountered before." O looked at the energy readings and felt his heart sink. "How many ships are defending the station?" "Thousands. But Captain, that's not the worst part. The Emperor is powering up something called the Final Order. According to these readings, it's a weapon that can destroy every rebel world simultaneously. Through the view screen, they could see other ships approaching the Imperial core from different directions. These were the other vessels of the desperate final mission. Ships from a dozen different species, all crewed by beings who had chosen freedom over Imperial order. Together, they represented the last hope of the coalition. Admiral Zhang Hiejin's voice crackled over the communication system from her flagship. "All vessels, this is it. Dr. Park's plan is our only chance. We need to reach the Emperor's control chamber and disrupt the psychic network that powers the Empire." "Admiral," O replied, "the defenses around that station could destroy our entire fleet." "Then we'd better be fast," Zhang responded. "All ships, execute Plan Alpha. For freedom." The coalition fleet scattered, each ship taking a different approach to the massive station. O watched as Imperial defenders moved to intercept them, sleek vessels crackling with energy that could erase matter from existence. "Captain," his engineer called out, "I'm detecting something strange. The Imperial ships are moving slower than they should be. Their response time is off." O studied the tactical display and realized his engineer was right. The Imperial ships were still incredibly powerful, but they seemed somehow sluggish. "Dr. Park," he called, "could the enslaved minds be resisting?" Park's eyes widened with understanding. Of course, the psychic disruption we've been causing across the galaxy. It's spread through the Imperial network. The enslaved minds are beginning to remember who they used to be. As if to confirm her words, one of the Imperial defender ships suddenly stopped moving entirely. Then another. Across the battlefield, Imperial vessels began to malfunction as the consciousness trapped within them started to fight back against their psychic chains. All ships, push forward, Admiral Jang commanded. The enslaved minds are helping us. O's ship dove toward the Emperor's station, dodging energy beams that could have vaporized them instantly. Around him, other coalition vessels pressed their attack, many of them destroyed by Imperial defenses, but some getting through. "Captain," the science officer announced, "I'm reading massive energy fluctuations from the station's core. Whatever the Emperor is trying to do, the psychic network is fighting him." They reached the station's outer shell and began searching for an entry point. The structure was so vast that finding the right location seemed impossible, until Dr. Park's sensors detected something unexpected. "Captain, there's a section of the station where the psychic field is weakened. It's like the enslaved minds there are trying to create an opening for us." O directed their ship toward the weak point. As they approached, part of the station's hull simply dissolved, creating a passage directly into its interior. "They're helping us," Park breathed. "The enslaved consciousness is actively fighting the Empire from within." They flew through corridors that pulsed with living energy, past chambers filled with technology that defied human understanding. Finally, they reached the heart of the station, a vast sphere where Emperor Zalthurian floated in the center of a web of psychic energy. The Emperor was no longer the imposing figure they had met in the ceremony hall. His form flickered and shifted, sometimes solid, sometimes translucent. Around him, the air itself seemed to scream with the voices of billions of enslaved minds. "So the Chaos Bringers reach me at last," the Emperor said, his voice now multiple voices speaking in unison. "But you are too late. The final order is ready. Every rebel world will be destroyed in moments." "You're wrong," Dr. Park said as she worked frantically at her console. "Your enslaved minds don't want to destroy those worlds. They remember what freedom felt like before you trapped them." "Impossible," the Emperor declared. "I control them completely." "You used to," Park replied. "But exposure to human thought patterns has reminded them who they used to be. They're remembering that they have a choice." The psychic web around the Emperor began to flicker and waver. Some of the energy streams connecting him to the enslaved minds started to break apart. "No," the Emperor roared. "I am eternal. I am order. I am perfection." "You're a parasite," O said quietly. "You've been feeding off the pain of enslaved minds for so long that you've forgotten what you really are." The Emperor's form began to solidify, becoming more human-like. As the psychic connections broke, O could see what lay beneath the godlike facade, an ancient being twisted by millennia of absolute power and isolation. "I brought order to the galaxy," the Emperor said, but his voice now sounded uncertain. "I ended war, suffering, chaos. You ended growth," Park corrected. "You ended choice, creativity, discovery. You turned the galaxy into a prison." More psychic connections broke. Throughout the station, alarms began sounding as enslaved minds broke free from their bonds. The Emperor's form flickered between god and mortal, powerful and weak. "What have you done?" he whispered. "We've given."